Having a homestead with no livestock seems kind of oxymoronic, but is it really? I'm Frenchie Powell, and I grew up at my parents' farm having livestock. All of my neighbors had or have livestock to this day. And when my wife and I set out on our own, the plan was when we started a homestead, we ourselves would have livestock. And so we started moving forward with that. Once we had our own property, we got chickens. And, we were planning to potentially get more, but then things changed. And we got rid of the chickens, and we don't have livestock anymore at all. And we don't even plan to get any. So, why is that? Is it a smart decision? Could it be right for you? Let's look at a couple reasons today on homesteading with no livestock, all the pros. So reason number one to not have livestock is I get to sleep in. All right. A farmer does not wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning or earlier to go check on the trees. The trees don't need that. It's the animals that you got to get up and feed and bring water to and, make sure they're doing all right and really give a lot of tender love and care towards. You can do that with plants, but, you can wait a little bit. So I get to sleep in. That's great. Yeah, I love it. Going hand in hand with point number one, point number two is I get to take vacations. Now, we used to travel a fair bit, actually, growing up, and we had livestock. But what that necessitated was making sure they were all cared for and or getting the neighbors to take care of them for us. So it can be a bit of a social ask if you want to, ask people to take care of your animals all the time when you're gone. And of course, when you leave for a trip, it could be for leisure, it could be for work, it could be for family. Whatever the reason, the moment you leave, those animals will get out of their pens and pastures. And there's going to be problems. Almost guaranteed. Almost every time, like clockwork, it would happen. So, being able to pack up and leave our perennial polyculture food forest system for 4-6 months at a time and just kick back at a different location, either doing work or visiting family, that wouldn't really be a feasible case without either having a big social ask of our neighbors or shelling out money for a caretaker of the animals while we were gone. I had a relative in the dairy business, and ask a dairy farmer how many days off they get. So that's point number two. All right, point number three is I save a whole lot of money. All right. So people always think, like, when you're getting started, it's all right, like I'll get 2 cows and then, they do their thing and you get more cows. Or I start out with a couple sheep, they do their thing and you get more sheep. I start out with some chickens and they do their thing and you get more chickens. Right, but what doesn't reproduce? Chicken coops. Chicken coops don't reproduce. Barns don't reproduce. Fences deteriorate over time. They don't reproduce. Wire and, rails and all of the infrastructure, that's stuff that does not improve over time. It deteriorates over time. You think about barns and housing for livestock, and you building an entire livable shelter for the most part for just some animals. Trees don't need that, and most crops don't need that. So a lot of the infrastructure costs, especially the way resources are getting more scarce, prices are going higher and higher. Being able to just have a shovel and stick a hole in the ground and plop a tree in the ground, that's pretty cheap. And then if you do that enough, away you go. And after that, you can fertilize them with chop and drop, or, we did a whole video on fertilizing for free. And if you're smart about which trees you plant, rainwater, that's free. You don't need a well. You don't need to carry water or pump up water for your trees. Choose climate smart trees. All right. we save a whole lot of money. They say with chickens even, it's like, oh, by the time I did the coop, by the time I buy the feed's another big one. Recurring cost there. Medication, oftentimes as well. By the time you buy the materials, the feed, the medication, and all the associated stuff, they're the most expensive free eggs that you get. And that's very true. So that's reason number 3. Reason number 4, I'm going to say, is water. I mentioned carrying water. Don't have to do that anymore. Hallelujah. Unless I'm like getting a tree established or a bush established, I don't carry water anymore. That's great. And I'm sure a lot of places are dealing with water scarcity. Animals drink a whole lot of water. Think how much water humans need. Animals drink a whole lot of water. And a lot of animals like to bathe or wallow or you name it. They need a lot of water. So, ignoring that for a second, let's focus on clean water. So when we had livestock, they had access to a pond, and they don't follow a lot of the same hygiene things that humans follow. They'll go down, walk in the water, and poop right in the water, and poop right by the water. And then when the rains come, all of the nutrients from that herd washes into the pond, and then you get an algae bloom, you get nutrients, through the roof and everything. In nature, natural systems, large herds are selected for only certain environments. Otherwise, manure is pretty spread out, which allows plants to uptake those nutrients and deal with it. You don't have dry lots in nature where, manure piles are accumulating higher and higher and higher. And if you've got a dry lot, the moment those nitrates and nitrogen compounds in the manure and in the urine work their way through the soil, they only have one chance to really get uptaken by the roots. If not, they go deeper into the soil levels and can contaminate the surface groundwater. And so imagine every single dry lot by a barn, every single time it rains, there's a plume of nutrients seeping into the surface water, and anyone with shallow wells, that can be contaminated. So, and you see it all the time. Cows right up to streams and creeks and erosion off of the sides. Won't get into it too much, but I know that I'm not contributing towards further erosion and water pollution with my trees. In fact, we're cleaning water and we're making water resources cleaner through the process of farming, which is great. We also don't apply any fertilizers. So yeah, when the water washes off of our property, it is crystal clear, and that's a good place to be at. The final point, other than cost, is why we kind of gave up even keeping chickens. And that is, I can now plant everywhere. If you take a little tree and you plant it out in a pasture, it's not going to last very long. It's going to get browsed. It's going to get eaten. You'd have to get a tree tube. Hope your animals don't decide they're going to gnaw and chew on a tree tube. Planting with large livestock is extremely difficult. And even planting seeds around, maybe you worked up an area, you planted a tree, you plant some beans in there, plant a squash plant or something in there. You can stack your plantings. And chickens were notorious anywhere that I would do mulch. They would come and tear it up. If seedlings came up, they would come through and peck them down. Now, some areas you'll deal with deer, or you'll deal with groundhogs or rabbits, or all slew of wild animals that also want to do similar things. So I'm a huge proponent of having a small vegetable garden and a massive ecology around you that's designed and is forageable for a whole host of perennial bushes and shrubs that produce fruits, nuts, fuels, you name it. And if you have livestock grazing in areas, that takes a huge chunk of land out of commission. So imagine, if you go by a hayfield or if you go by a pasture, you took the livestock off and you planted trees, just how much food could be produced on that same area. Now, I'm not saying make a monocultured orchard, by no means, But you can grow a whole lot of food on a whole lot less area for a whole lot less work and money if you stick with perennial plants. And if you throw in diversity in there of tons of, hundreds of edible different perennials, you really rack up that nutritional quality of your landscape and of your food producing system. So there's an amazing opportunity cost if I decided to keep livestock. I mean, just cows, for example. I could grow more calories and more protein per unit of land by growing iceberg lettuce than by going for beef. That's ridiculous. Do the math. So, yeah, by sticking with plants, we can plant pretty much anywhere. And if we produce a surplus and enough food for ourselves, and it would then be more and more labor to harvest beyond a certain area. Okay, cool. I can let more land go to nature, and that helps with the keeping predators around and dealing with my pest pressure and all sorts of ecosystem functions that we get from that. And then a final reason, what is this, reason number 6, that I'll say for not having livestock would be red-tailed hawks and eagles. That's kind of a model or a representation of not having livestock. Is, growing up, I would see a hawk flying in the air and it was, oh, where are the chickens? Are the chickens okay? Are they in? Are they under bushes? Like, having livestock skews your mind towards predators. Fox in a hen house. That's not a good situation. You got sheep. What do you think of coyotes? These are relationships that are integral to ecosystem function. And to then be at enmity with hawks, to then be at enmity with eagles and birds of prey, or things like foxes. Now when I growing, produce, I look at predators and I think, oh, wow, they're on my side. Because maybe those foxes will eat the voles or the mice or the rodents, and the hawks, same thing. Owls are great. Like, the more predators in my ecosystem, I'm not saying in homesteads of high population density, reintroduce wolves. That would be a whole nother topic. But these smaller predators, sure, they're not going to bother a cow. But chickens, especially, like every homesteader has to have chickens, right? Well, the moment you do that, you've got issues with these medium and small predators, even weasels. And I just don't have that anymore. And it's great. So I get to work more holistically with my ecosystem around me than I would be able to otherwise. So these are some basic intro reasons as to why we don't have livestock on our homestead. Now, am I saying that no homestead should have livestock? No, not really. Am I saying that no livestock is ever valuable to a homestead? No, not really. I mean, the one livestock I guess you could say I kind of keep is honeybees. Why? Because I keep them following the method by a guy named Thomas Seeley. Check out his work. It's a way of natural beekeeping. And I can leave them for 6 months and be fine. I don't really deal with predators. And yeah, they integrate into the ecosystem really well. So are there exceptions to the rule? Yeah, probably sometimes. Can livestock be integrated holistically into ecosystem food production? Sure. Not going to get a whole lot of meat production, but yeah, you can do it. But for us, and for the reasons that I've mentioned, keeping livestock just, I don't know, it's a bit on both ends of the spectrum, and it's just better without them. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. Do you think these points make sense? Am I a raging idiot and have no idea what I'm talking about? What livestock do you keep, or why don't you? And yeah, let me know in the comments section below. I will see you guys in the next video.